dog sounds or anything like that. It's 5 a.m. here, so it's bright and early, but it's the best way possible to start my day. So, why don't we start with just hearing where you're all from? If you could put it in the chat, just where you're calling in from, if you feel called to, just to see how wide our web is spreading. So we could take a minute to put that into the chats. And in the meantime, as you all do that and tell us where you're coming in from, I'll just talk a little bit about how this event even came to be. One day, Yale and Ia and I were on a call, and we were talking about intergenerational work and how we can do this in the modern day and how we can make it work. And then the conversation just kind of led to talking about the Woman King and media in this way. And maybe because there's such a thing about media today that can tie generations and different people together. And so as we got into the discussion, I think we realized how rich the topic was and how much there was to unfold there. And then we were like, why don't we reach the broader community? And it was really Ia who was like, why don't we do a movie night? And it was just kind of this fun whimsy seed that turned into like, oh yeah, this can go deep. And if we bring it to the broader community and meet it with curiosity, this topic, let's see what unfolds, because it's something that is so, I think, important today and relevant. So yes, thank you for being here. Oh, we have Alaska, Oakland, New Zealand. Oh, this is amazing. All over. San Francisco. Botswana. Hi, Banti. So yeah. Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. I think in a minute, Yael is going to take us through some guidelines, technical guidelines, just to help kind of ground us in this space.
So thank you, Mary. I will go very briefly over the event flow, so we're all on the same page. I will explain a little bit now, and we're already apologizing that some of you sent beautiful questions, and we are, bounded by time. So we will get to as many questions as time allows. But thank you all for bringing questions, and feel free to bring some more questions in the chat box. We don't know how it will develop, and maybe some more to come from this. This is our first time. So thank you, and thank you for doing the homework and watching the films and the videos. If tech allows, we might be able to watch a few clips that may come up in the conversation, but we don't know. I'm in Alaska, so the internet here is not very stable. So apologize for that. And what I do want us to tune into before we go into the prayer will soon take us into an opening prayer. And after that, we will have questions in the chat box for a few minutes of silent questions, or any reflections, any insights, anything you want to share. Our speakers requested to listen before they speak, which is very much the native way to do, the indigenous way to do things. And so we are grateful for that. And then Mary will take us into the interview, the actual questions and answers from the speakers. And we'll end with another chat box with maybe things you have gathered from this meeting, things you want to share about it, and then a closing prayer. But before we begin all that, I would like for us to take a deep breath, grounding us into our bodies, into this place, into this togetherness, into the moment that we are all in, and to the synchronicity of all of us being at one moment, at one time, out of the infinite possibilities that I'm sure all of us have. But still, you have chosen to dedicate this moment of your life to this, and we are grateful and sharing this with you and hope it will be good. And as we are exhaling, we can let go of all the needs and musts and shouldas and couldas and really be here with all of these people and listen. Listen with the ear at the heart of our heart. If you look at the word heart, it has an ear in the middle of it, at the heart of it, and the ear at the beginning of earth. And as we are listening to that, we will be helped by the guidelines of traditional talking circles, indigenous talking circles. Our elders found exists in every indigenous culture. It is in different ways and has different names, but it has the same shared guidelines. And these are guidelines that we would like to have in this discussion too, where this is a talking circle, which means even when you don't speak, the circle is doing a talking that includes you too. Today it's going to be by our elders and our speakers, and our hosts. So we will let the circle do the talking while our active action is to do the listening. We ask everyone to be respectful towards yourself, your other self, in the circle and beyond, to time and attention. This is a potluck of offerings. So please be respectful and don't push away anything, even if you don't like it, or if it doesn't nourish you, because it might nourish others. Innocence. We are asking to listen with the innocence of a child, without judgment or resistance or titles or agendas. And just take from the potluck whatever nourishes you. But realize that even if I'm usually a deer and I'm listening to the lion tell the story, I can for a moment see the story through the eyes of the lion without judging that which I'm used to. And with that, I get a reflection of my inner lion, inner self that I usually maybe not give voice to. And we ask that people only speak their own truth through their own lived experience, nothing that is borrowed or taught or that we were educated to think in a certain way, but just bring yourself. This is a deep request from our speakers. You are blessing us with your presence, so please bring the presence of your presence. And may we create a space that is safe and brave enough to enable you to do so. And expand in each and every listener. Let's expand to contain an other truth, an other self, even when it's not so comfortable. Because as the womb teaches us, this is what enables the creation of something completely new that never existed before in us, and then possibly outside of us. And if anyone has anything to say about these guidelines, any other suggestions, now is the time. I will give a minute if anyone wants to unmute or put something in the chat box that they would want. Okay, so we're all in agreement. And Mary, I'm handing this over to you to start the hosting. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So I would like to invite our dear Elder Ia to do the opening prayer. Ia.
Greetings from St. Croix, Virgin Island, the land of the Taina and Chippewa people, as is in native understanding and indigenous understanding. We invite the elemental spirits to come in, and we give gratitude. And I'm feeling that ancestor presence of grandmother, great grandmother, the ones who walked the path in my childhood, in my birthland, Pocahontas, Mississippi. Somehow they're here today. So I want to acknowledge them because I'm feeling them very presently in this moment. And I'm remembering grandmother say, I don't speak until I greet the day. I don't feed you, child, until I greet the day. I'll get to you in a minute, but I need to greet the day. So I want to greet the day. I want to greet the rising day from the east. Thank you, ancestors from the east, those who will give birth to life, who breathes into us this life. Thank you, ancestors. I want to give thanks to those ancestors who sit in this south wing here. Oh, thank you for being here with us and having charted the way for us. Oh, ancestors, we are so grateful for you. And those ancestors who sit in the west, in that dream time, and dreamed us that we would all gather again at this. And they said we would all gather around the table. We would all gather at the bank. We would gather and we would have this conversation. So thank you, ancestors. I'm so grateful that you're here today. Thank you. And I'm feeling that those ancestors that whispered the message of awakening, the arising, the transformation, the ascension, those ancestors who arrived in the north and sat there in the north. Thank you, ancestors, for this great gathering, this great banquet. Thank you so much. And I'm feeling the ancestors that sat underneath my feet. Oh my God, I was thinking that foundation that holds us. Thank you, ancestor, great mother Earth. Thank you so much. And to the divine that sits above us, we know that in the 1,000 names that we know you and call you, we are so, so grateful to be here in this moment, in this time. Thank you so much. That we could come to this table and begin to dream and explore these opportunities to be again in a community that would come to know itself as a one community, yet with different patterns, different expression, and different gifts that it would bring. And I want to be in gratitude to all of those who brought their loving hearts and their beautiful hearts here to enter into this conversation, to help us weave together these beautiful relationships in these intergenerational, interdimensional ways. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, beautiful people. Thank you. And I say Ashe, and I say Aho. I say Amen. Ashe, Ashe.
Thank you so much, Ia. That was beautiful, beautiful way to ground into the space, and just open this up. So as we get started, as Yael was saying before, kind of the way we're going to do this is open it to the audience, to the community, so that you can put your questions into the chat box, whether they be about one of the films or just this discussion in general, or like an insight that maybe you have that you want to hear the speakers touch on more. And it doesn't mean that we're going to get to every single question, for the sake of time, but if there's kind of ongoing themes that tie together, maybe we can fuse some questions and then direct them at the speakers, so that we can touch at least a little bit on your question or insight. So with that, you can put your questions in the chat now, and we won't be answering them the first round, but I think in the second round, we'll go through some of them and have a chance to do a little Q&A. So we invite you now in some silence to put your questions in. And if you don't have one, maybe just take a moment, sit and think. And if anything calls you to ask or put in the chat, go for it now. Give a minute for that. So I see in the chat now, the question that came in advance is perfect because this is kind of our round one go around that we want to ask in the first place to kind of get to know the speakers and let this unfold. So keep sending in questions as we go if things arise. There's not any limit on that, but what was sent was, why have you agreed to come to this talk and what in this interested in you? What in this interested you? And I feel like this is kind of your why, like why are we here in the first place? So let's start there. Let's jump right in. And amongst the speakers, if anyone feels called to just go first and jump in, we're ready. So what is your why?
Well, I will jump in. My name is Carolyn Renee Morris. I go by Carolyn Renee. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am the daughter of EA. And what called to me to this conversation and of interest, you know, I had not seen the documentary nor the Woman King movie, so that was an opportunity, number one. And the other calling, of course, answer my mother, yes, love you, mom. And the other is my belief in the power of women. You know, I am a woman and I believe in our, I want to say the divine feminine energy. I want to speak in those terms. I believe in the divine feminine energy. And I remember in 1998, maybe, I was dreaming into a song called Women of the New Century. And I remember asking my mother, you know, remember asking EA, you know, who are the women of the 21st century? And I also have a nonprofit called Women Helping Others Advance, WHOA, with the intention of creating movements on the planet that make people stop and go, whoa, in a good way. So I think it's like a combination of, you know, my belief in the power that we have as divine feminine, believing in that the divine feminine energy, and that this is our time. And, you know, we're in 2023 and a shift happened 23 years ago, you know, and I just feel like we're just now catching up. And so I'm here because I believe in the power of the divine feminine, and I wanted to be part of this conversation. And I certainly was inspired by watching the Hollywood movie Woman King and also Lapita's visit to Benin. So very inspirational and motivational for me. So here for that. Pass it to Jamina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamina States. I am Carolyn Renee's niece and Ia Tahira's granddaughter. And so, yes, answering the call of my grandmother to participate is one of the reasons why I'm here. Also, I'm really fascinated and interested in, and I'm constantly thinking about how films and history and how films portray history all kind of shape how we see ourselves as human beings in the world. I really love conversations that call us in to reflect on that. So that's my deepest interest in being here today.
Mary, can we ask your why?
Yeah. um, yeah, so my background is in kind of human wildlife conflict and conservation, but then also the arts. And I feel it was challenging integrating the two in my time. And then I had the opportunity to study in Botswana a few years ago doing conservation, and that changed my whole scope of just kind of integrating cultural preservation with environmental conservation and women's empowerment. Because the second day of my time in Botswana, I met this wisdom keeper who's very special to my heart, and just learned so much from her. She always said that women are the custodians of culture. And so she's kind of facing this struggle now where youth are being called to modernization and technology, and leaving the ancestral wisdom behind. And so she works with unemployed youth to kind of keep alive these oral traditions and these stories, but also through their own creativity, through like new workshops, um, and just how it's so integrated, keeping these cultural ways alive with preserving the environment. And so one of the oral, I'm so sorry about the rooster. Uh, there goes the mail trying to call in. But one of the ways in which one of the stories that she told was of these two sisters, and there was this strong dichotomy. It was a creation story between the really fierce, feisty sister and then the really soft sister. And it just allowed there to be both, that it didn't have to be one or the other, because these two sisters were kind of competing to rule the kingdom. And what they realized in the end was they needed to both rule together in order to create the wholeness of the universe. And they ultimately became night and day, and agriculture and hunting, and predators and prey, and they created the whole landscape together. And I feel like that's a big theme in the movie. And so I think bridging dichotomies and then also reconciliation are two words that come up for me a lot in this discussion and in my why. Reconciliation today of like relationships, mother daughter in the film, female relationships, and then the patriarchy and the matriarchy. Um, so that was a little all over the place, but that's my why here today. And I'll call on Ia to share yours.
My why is to always be present and answer the call. Because when the call go out, I feel that it's a bigger call. It's not you may be the carrier, it might be the messenger for the time. But it feels to me that when the call go out, that this is the way that our ancestor, the spirit comes through and say it's time. Somehow it nourishes us. And I feel that if I relate it to this film that's happening, these conversations around Woman King, that even though it's fictionalized and it's coming out of Hollywood, but there's a greater nudge, there's a greater energy behind what's being pushed at us and brought forth for us. And it feels to me that it's time for us to look beyond and beneath the surface of all things and begin to really be truth tellers and see what's really being said. Because so often we get caught up in the drama and we begin to mirror the drama as opposed to going beneath and understanding the struggle. My mother is woman king. So if I can see my mother, see these transit pieces in time, no matter how they come through, but if I can see them, I can hold them in a way that they have messages for me, and they help me to mend the way and begin to piece together that broken web and to understand really what's underneath there. And so it speaks to me. I feel that we, the elders, have to speak to those pieces that drops out and not take them as truth, but a story that happened in the evolution of our own human souls. So it motivates me to, and if we don't give voice to it, we leave our children still trapped in that old paradigm, that old story, because it is a story. No matter how it feels inside of us, it's a story. So how do we bring forth that story in a way that it tells our truth, our inventive truth, and write our story, and how it gets played out on this playing field that we call Earth. So that's my motivation. That's my inspiration, is to show up and answer the call. So thank you for the question. Before I go, I want to acknowledge, I hope this is okay, I want to acknowledge my beloved sister, Latish. I know we may not, I just want to acknowledge her. I'm so grateful that she's here, and I want to pass the baton to her, if that's okay. So I really honor that. Thank you.
Yes, of course. If you want to share what your why is, why in being here, please.
I'm sorry, are you talking to me?
Talking to you, Elder.
Bless your heart, sister. I was so busy looking at the questions in the chat that I missed my cue. I
Well, this
love you.
Shea Lafia Ni.
Oh my goodness. I am just so grateful that we are able to gather here, and probably the most valuable thing that I can say right now is, there's an undertone here right now about whether or not Hollywood has accurately portrayed the position of women in West Africa, the West African women warriors. They definitely existed. They definitely defended us in the slave Holocaust, and their spirits are very much alive and still with us. One of the things that guides me is I was told that Yahi, who was the last of the Dahomey razor cut women, died the year and the month that I was born. And so I have always turned to her spirit for those times when a fight was necessary. And the other undertone that keeps showing up in the chat is people are asking questions as if being fierce and being gentle are diametrically opposed to each other. And they are not. Okay, we have what I call situational ethics. If the Klan is running after me, be fierce and kill them. If my baby is crying, be gentle and nurse it. That's what it is. That's what it is. Everything else is intellectual debate as far as I'm concerned. And we can clearly tune into the ancestors tune into the powers of nature, and make a decision about which response is appropriate at the time. I am so glad to be able to be here. I'm going to have to leave in about 15 minutes because I'm one of them sisters who always overbooks herself. But I was not about to miss this. I am so grateful that we are gathering here, and I will be at the next one. So please let me know. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. And Ia or speakers, if there's anyone else you feel called who's shown up today, who you really want to hear their voice, please feel free to call on them. You're free. You're welcome.
Well, it's basic. I appreciate it because Louisa may not know that she and I sat together in 1998 in Indianapolis, Indiana. And when I go to Oakland, I was traveled there doing my journey, initiatory journey with Malidoma Somé. And always I would ask of her, and I met people that know her, and I know people that know her. And so it's just, she warms my heart because she, to me, I don't know age-wise, but Louisa is my elder, man.
Ashe.
And
I'll be
she
75 this month, baby.
But see, I understand elder from the place of wisdom keeper.
Ashe.
And she had the courage to step out and name certain things that people feared to name through her writing and her storytelling. So I honor her because she is like the wind under my wing and holds me up. So I really need to acknowledge her. So that's my thing. Thank you to acknowledge you. Thank you.
She's also my memory too, because these days I can barely remember where I was when doing what. So when you said where we were, it was like, okay, remember that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Iya.
If I get to Oakland, I'll look you up.
Definitely. I'll be here.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just want to thank both of you, Latish and my mother, EA Tahira, for the work that you have done and make it possible for me to be where I am at this moment. I remember very fondly EA Tahira, and it's hard to believe that it's been, I'm sure, more than 20 years ago, she began a women's rites of passage, and we would meet on the full moon and the new moon, and we used your book as one of our guides in that work that we were doing at that time. So, I just, again, and I think it's been more like 30 years ago. I really want to, just say thank you to you and thank you to my mother. And then to this question of, masculine and feminine and, fierceness. I think at the end of the day, for me, it boils down to wisdom, to have the wisdom to know what action to take in the moment, as divine feminine, do I need to, I won't say what I've said to my daughters, but do I need to, invoke my masculine energy in this situation? And as a single mother, I just want to speak to that and to the single mothers in the world, who are fierce, especially in these times, when people are snatching babies and doing all sorts of, inhumane things on the planet. So, invoking our wisdom and calling on our warrior energy when we need to make a new day in this world, because what we're being called on at this time, it is seriously spiritual warfare. And so there's so much to learn from the women in the movies, in the documentary that we had an opportunity to see, because in their time, that's exactly what they were dealing with. It was spiritual warfare, so it was the darkness of greed, coming in to take Benin's greatness, and then again, wisdom, does the offer look so shiny and great that I would sacrifice my people? So you got to have the wisdom to know what to say yes to, what to say no to, when to be soft, and when to rise. So that's what I want to share. Sorry, I was impassioned.
I'm glad to hear that we are reinstating the rites of passage. Just recently, last weekend, I was proud to take 13 elders through an eldering rite of passage. And I mean, we did the full tilt boogie, not just sitting around chit chatting and then celebrating, but going through all of the stages of a formal rite of passage. I want to say that we need more places where we can construct backyard huts. We need more places where we can go out into nature and do our rites of passage. At some point, I saw in the chat that one of the sisters is doing something in in Ghana, and I want to put out there that I have a place in Accra called Oshun's Palace, where we are gathering materials so that the young women can make their own menstrual supplies. We have the problem that they are good in school until first moon cycle, then they have to drop out because they don't have the supplies. We need to make sure that our girls are getting what they need all over the world. So I'm happy to see a Life of Peace Wellness Education Institute in Ghana, and I'll be in touch with you. Thank you, everybody, for whatever you are doing. If it is inspired by the ancestors, listen carefully, go bravely, and get the resources you need, because this is the work that we have to do at this point to save humanity, sanity, and the planet. That's it. That's the bottom line on it. I do see that as we have to decolonize and re-indigenize, and connect to nature. The other thing, because I'm going to have to go soon, the other thing I want to put out here is I've been working with the committee to get the Pope to rescind the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine that it was all right to rape and pillage and steal from everybody in the name of conversion. This morning, the word comes that the Pope has rescinded that doctrine. And so we should be seeing in the future some reparations to Indigenous people everywhere. And also, I'm working on the committee to stop ecocide. We need to recognize that our Mother Earth is a living, breathing being with rights, with the right to exist and the right to receive reverence from us. So please save the chat, yeah, and I will tune back in, but I got a class in about 7 minutes. So I appreciate you all, and I will tune back in as soon as possible. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. Oh, that was such a treat. And it's so beautiful to see your relationship, Ia, because I feel that was such a theme too of just the power of female relationships. Whereas I think in the media a lot, it's a lot of romantic kind of relationships that we're fed, but I really like to see the strength and the power of female friendship. Um, so that was beautiful. And actually, questions come in. I think a really good one, which is ancestors and their guidance appear in the film. Can we understand more about it from your own experiences? So I'm just going to put that out there. And yeah, to our speakers.
Are you bringing that to us, Mary?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
I am.
I didn't know if we was invited. Since I opened that, the question is, repeat the question again so I can put it in.
Yeah, of course. Ancestors and their guidance appear in the film. Can we understand more about it from your own experiences?
Hmm. Hmm. Sometimes when we see it as it's a story coming to me. One night, I was 4 years of age. And it was thundering and lightning, and my mom had to make way to feed the newborn baby, the new baby to the family at that time. And there was, at that time, when the milk would dry in the breast, they had to have cow milk. And there was no cow milk in the house. I don't know where my father was, but my mom had to make way to find milk for the baby in that lightning and thundering. And so I didn't witness this, but it was a story told to me. And I tried to wrap my head around that story when I was a child, because when our parents told stories, or the old ones told stories, it was so mystified that you could hardly understand. It was like a fairy tale almost. And Mama said at that time she was like, know how she was going to get milk for her baby, and it's storming, and how do I get milk for a baby? And so she prayed and made her prayer. Because in that time they prayed. Whatever way we pray, if we pray using whatever is at hand at that point, the potency of it comes from this womb place of the mother, I believe, or whatever. That mother, when she calls to something, something happens. My mother swears that this old horse came and leaned down and said, I hear you. Will you get upon me and I'll take you to get milk for your baby? Is that a true story or not? So my mother said it took her across the way, all the way down to my big mama, who was my great grandmother, Mahalia. And they lived some ways from us at that time. And landed her there. She got the milk and she brought it back. And so she often told this story. So I think that in those deep times that we have become so in modernity doesn't allow us to embody these stories and this wisdom in a way. We try to intellectualize it. We try to put a figure on it, as opposed, it comes from a deep place. Sometimes there's no word, it's a felt sense of trust and sense. Because when we forget to trust in the trust of life, what is there, when we could get that faith in what is there, we lose the context of that connection that we have with this living potency of ancestor. And in our Western way of thinking, we think in terms of death and completion. But in the indigenous world, we think of life and continuation. And that life may have crossed over And on this side, it may not have been in a place that it could help me, but in that space over there, it's potent if I know how to tune into it and tap into it and go to those elemental forces that will connect me. And that's what we've seen in if we entertain and looking at these women when they go back to this altar, they literally go into the elemental forces. In the Western world, our enslaved Africans were slain, but even trusting those elemental forces were literally slain, even in their drums, in their song, and their hum. But those forces was forces that saved it. Somewhere they knew that. And coming through this, and I want to take us back to this film, because in the film is those stories that are untold, because this war is going on in a time when there's a breaking apart of something that is real, because that war that's going on in Oyo and the name is this a war between the spiritual world, because the potency of those elements of Yoruba, Ifa, is, see how people get caught in Yoruba, Ifa, that cosmology, that mystical land is down underneath there. And so it was being eradicated. And those were some of those people that was enslaved was those people, because it was an attempt to wipe it out. We don't get that in the story. It's a knowingness there. The ancestor lives. If we can understand that the ancestor lives and breathes, we are that ancestor. If we can remember them, we remember the ancestor because we remember who we are, because they are very much a part of who we are. Their body, they dead, the breath went out, but that force of energy, that force of energy is life, is continuing. Can I breathe it in? Can I bring it with me? And feel it when it wants to have a voice, and just trust it. It may not make sense to the logical mind, but it's there yet the same. So we go back and we look at this part. If we want to take this fierce part, when Viola violates the message that the king gives her, she knew. I mean, she goes into that space, and it was something she knew. Even she went against that order. But in the end, what comes out is this piece of, yes, she saved the kingdom by disobeying. So sometimes we have to disobey what that logical mind, that, because I don't know that we always get rid of patriarchy. I think it's a middle ground between these two polarities, masculine and feminine, and that we given the opportunity to look at how they work together, not against each other. So this time around, we have to begin to say how they work together, because sometimes I need that force over there, that what we have deemed negative as a patriotic, and we want to kill it. But do we kill it, or do we harmonize it where it come back into balance? And I think that, I know you asked me a lot, our two-spirited people are the people that carried that message for us, if we can look at them, because they also bringing that message. Because even in that film, you see the two-spirited people. What am I talking about? Two-spirited. We're afraid to talk about homosexuality because we don't understand it. It's two-spirited people. They stand it in our indigenous knowing it, they are the gatekeepers. They stand in between the two worlds. So the ancestor speaks through these lenses in such ways that sometimes mystifies us and behoove us to even say it. Thank you. Was that clear enough for you, Mary?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You took me on a journey, as you always do. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's there's so much there, and we're receiving so many amazing questions in the chat, and I'm wondering maybe if I, since there are so many good ones and I don't want to lose any, maybe if I just read a bunch of them and then speakers, if you feel really called to answer one or find a theme between a couple, I just invite you to speak on that. So um, we have, what do you see as the role of circle process as a way forward together? We have, in today's circumstances, what advice is there for women who are called to stand radically for their values and standards of protecting life, which I feel you even just touched on, Ia. Um, this one says, rather than strong women being warriors of the patriarchy, how might we unite and lead from the transverse dimension of love? Um, So those are a few questions, and I can repeat any if needed, that I just posed to the speakers that we're getting in from the chat. Maybe Carolyn or Yaminia, do you have any input on one of these, or I could repeat any of them if needed.
No, did I just see you take yourself off silence, Jamina?
Yes, but I think I need to think some more, if I may reflect a little more. Or yeah, it's popping up here again, so I guess I want to address it. The the question about women warriors for the patriarchy on one side and love on the other side, I think has kind of been addressed already. But I was just thinking about how I considered it just in my own life and through the lens of these films. I appreciated, it was really linear, the Lupita documentary, just taking us from admiring these women to diving deeper and deeper into the complex role that they played in that ancient society. And I thought that was interesting. I appreciated her for doing that because it raises, really real questions about, as the elder Louisa says, situational ethics. And it's really easy to judge history from our position looking in the rearview mirror, because we have different ideas of what's normal, right? We have different norms, and we have the benefit of retrospective viewpoint. And so it's easy to judge what was happening in the past based on that, but we have to sit in those shoes. What did they know? What did they not know that we know now? There's contention about what kind of slavery African people thought they were sending their captives into by selling them to the Europeans. And so with that ignorance comes some of the mistakes that were made. With it comes the whole transatlantic slave trade, right? That's not the topic of the question, but that kind of is how I like to sit on the fence and look at all of the perspectives and all of the ways that both sides can be right. And so when you think about being a warrior, there's no such thing as being a warrior and not having love in your heart. You love something. You love your country. You love your people. You love your life. And for those who have the concept that God is love, what does that mean? What does that really mean? I think that our role here, I don't know that I don't experience God as love, but I definitely believe that we have a creative imperative to continue our lives, and our lives can be an act of devotion, of love. And so if I need to defend that, if I need to defend my right to continue to breathe on this planet so that I continue to live in love and devotion to the divine, then it requires me to be defensive if I'm attacked. It requires me to play the game and so that I don't get played. There is a time for everything. There is a time to fight and there is a time to be gentle and to be loving, and those things in a linear sense, yeah, there are different times, but that's not real. What's real is that time is a circle, or a Jeremy Bear Me. Shout out to The Good Place, if you watch that show. And so, you know, those things are happening. Those energies can exist within us all at once. And yeah, there are opposing sides, but polarity and opposites is also allowed the universe. There's always going to be a back and forth, a good and bad, a darkness and a light. If I may, there was another question that I thought was interesting in the chat about the notion of evil. And they were just asking for like how we look at evil. And I thought that was really interesting in the context of this conversation. I think evil is I don't think of a devil or like a demon or a thing out to get you. I think that all beings have free will, and you can use your free will in service to the divine, or you can choose your free will. You choose to use your free will against and opposing the divine. And I think evil is simply the choice to do bad, to do what is contrary to the divine. If we're all here to live, if we're all here to create, the evil's intent is to destroy. And it's not some nebulous, cloudy force. It's a conscious choice on the behalf. I mean, however deep you want to go, some people think, you know, God decided to fight God's self and experience an opposing force in the universe. But at some point, someone makes a choice to do something against life, against creation, against love. And that is my concept of evil. And so you can also put that in the context of what were these women fighting for? What were these nations fighting for? And why nations continue to fight each other? Is it out of love, or is it out of a choice to do evil? You decide.
Are we needing more clarity on that, Mary?
No, that was brilliant. Just taking a moment to digest that all. And just thinking of kind of the end of the little documentary when Lupita was left with that question. I think exactly of, okay, is this out of love? And that there can be multiple truths, that it can be both. Embracing all those complexities. So it's something interesting to unpack against the one-dimensional, like Hollywood hero. They just want to make it one kind of surface level thing. But yeah, these questions are awesome. And I love how you just saw a question in the chat and kind of dove into that as well. Speakers, if there's anything you're seeing in the chat that I might be missing for questions too, please feel free to touch on as well. And a question that I even have, because we have 3 generations here, which I feel is such a gift, is which Ia, you answered about ancestral wisdom, like how might ancestral wisdom show up in your life, especially like I'm 23, being on kind of the younger side of the world right now. Like it might not necessarily be as ingrained to look up to ancestral wisdom, especially with media and phones and things that we have today. So kind of how do you be a creator in that, in your own life, creating that space, and at the same time calling back to the old ways and being in touch with ancestry and that kind of wisdom.
There's a tradition of storytelling that is a rich part of our culture and way of being. So passing on the stories of our ancestors, that we not forget their contributions, is one of the things that EA has done for us and in our family lineage. And I would not really know how to have an ancestor altar at my door as I do behind me if it were not for EA. And you know what that means, and invoking the spirit of the ancestors each day, because there is my strength and part of my reason, my why for living. And so just being conscious and mindful of this in an effort to pass it along, pass it forward to my own children, consistently, even if it's stories they've heard 100 times, you know, allowing them to hear it 150 times, because I matter, because EA matters, and because Jamina matters, and our, you know, future generations to come matter. And so these stories are the thread that continue to connect us. So Sankofa, you know, reaching back in order to move forward is really important part of our tradition and way of building family and community.
I want, sorry.
Go-
Jamina, you had something to say. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I want to hear from you.
Okay. Everything that my aunt just said is on point and true. You know, when people pose this question to me, I'm kind of cagey. I don't really like to talk about it. I usually encourage you to go do, if you are interested, talk to your ancestors. You know, the first thing anyone ever told me, both my grandmother and my sisters, as I was going through Howard, everyone says a white cloth, a white candle, and a glass of water in our tradition is what you do when you want to talk to ancestors. And that's it. Talk to them, trust what you're hearing, and build your own relationship. For me, it's very important that, for me, it has been important to build my own practice and to build my own relationship. Nobody else can do it for you. And their blood is your blood. And so they live inside of you. It is your right to contact them, to have a connection and build with them. I also think that is important because there's a lot that you can learn. You know, there's a trite saying about if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. That is most true when you look at your ancestral family lines. If you don't know their stories, if you don't know their strengths and their weaknesses, you are actually repeating them. You are actually carrying the best and the worst of everything. And I love this term. I got it from Neil Gaiman, of all people, professional descendant. You know, I consider myself a professional descendant. It's my job to understand my family's history and to understand ancestry and to take my place in that lineage. So, I mean, for me, I take it very seriously. I don't think that it's a thing that you can dabble in or something that you should, you know, just when you need it or when you want it. For me, it's a very much a part of my everyday life. And so I think if you're curious, take it seriously and talk to them and be with them. Some of them are friendly, some of them are not friendly. You'll and you'll just learn how to be with that. So I think that's all I have. Yay, professional descendants. Who will one day be professional ancestors.
I want to just lean into a little bit of that. One of the things I found in the Western world, again, and especially among my my white body spirit people, white body people, white people. What is that, white body people? Because I'm trying to get another language, even from white body, black body people. You know, like I'm really playing with the labels that we put on ourselves. But I think that it's fear for especially for the Caucasian bodies to look at their ancestors, because there's such horrific kinds of violations there. A young man said to me one time, I was teaching how to build ancestor altars. He said, suppose I found that he said, I'm almost certain, but suppose I really found that my ancestors were slaveholders. I said, well, good. He said, what? He said, well, you say it's good. I say it's good because that is your opportunity to reconcile that and to do some work. And so they living inside of you. Would you choose to live that out? What was the lesson the valuable lesson and wisdom you can bring out of that? And look at your place in this story, and weaving a new kind of story on the earth, because the ancestor story, no matter how horrific these stories are, these are opportunities also. And I don't ask people to walk with me. See, my thing is that creation don't make mistakes. You say, well, what are you talking about? Creation has to expand itself. I just want that to drop. Creation itself has to expand. It cannot know itself if it stays in its pure form. A baby cannot grow if it stays in its pure form, in that innocent form. So he breaks out and it wants to experience, it wants to explore, it wants to go, because it has to experience in order to be able to reach its own highest soul's evolution. Its own. See, I think that we approach life in the Western world as its permanent talent attached to it, as opposed to co-creators and creation with creator itself. We are co-creators with the divine itself. I love when the Japanese say, the universe is in me, and that I am in the universe, and the universe and I are one. The one. But if I stand in this duality, I may not find that the universe and I are one. That the male part of that male that I carry inside of me, I can reconcile it where it does not continue to produce this force of energy on the planet. To me, that might be an act of love. I don't know what it is. All I know that it's when you come to know that, it sort of lays there in that place that Callan mentioned, the Sankofa, go back and fetch it. Go back to the place of your beginning and come forward again and see what choices you have made. Were they good choices? Did they serve the whole, or did they serve your individual greed? So there's many pieces, and I like to say now, we're not going anywhere, folks. We're not going anywhere. You're not going to die and go to heaven because you was a good person. What's a good person? You know what a good person is. I think that this is our time to re-examine the kind of stories we tell ourselves about this life and about how we live this life, and what's our expression, our created energy. Again, how do we travel back up from that broken pieces that we got shattered in this deep downfall into the darkness? How do we now scramble our ways and weave ourselves back up out of the darkness to create this holiness? And so this is an indicator, because we have all of these different pieces around this table, different indigenous people, pieces, different body shapes. All of us are coming together in this space. And so we get this opportunity to weave it and craft it in a way that we want it. But we have to look at that ancestor inside and say, if it was my grandparents or whoever it was, talk to them. I wasn't happy with I wasn't happy with that. But I'm going to forgive myself for holding on to that story so I can be a better expression of creation in this time. I'm forgiving myself because I'm the one holding the story, repeating the story. I'm the one telling the story. So I have the opportunity, I can choose to retell the story and go. It's an old story. It says the old one goes back to the cave to reweave a new story because she realized something got broken. That's the wise wisdom one. She goes back in the inner cave and face that darkness. And she comes back with a new story to tell. And don't be afraid, because I think the other thing we want to logistically, the linear brain wants to believe that it knows the answer without trusting the answer. Because the answer is not always fit in the linear way of seeing. Sometimes it doesn't even have words. It's a trust. When I go to my ancestor, and I know when I violated, I know exactly when I violated. So thank you again for those beautiful questions.
Thank you for the beautiful wisdom. My goodness. All three of you. It's just amazing. And I think, Ia, you talked on a lot of themes like reconciliation was brought up, this idea of weaving a new story together, um, weaving in different colors, different bodies, different backgrounds, different ages. And someone had asked in the chat as the circle way about being the way forward. Let me get the exact question. Yeah, what do you see as the role of the circle process as a way forward together? Which I think you just put that out there, but I'm kind of curious, like in its raw truth, like what would that look like? And also intergenerationally is something I'm curious about. Just as I told that story with my elder in Botswana, like she's losing youth, they're losing the culture and kind of losing their way due to this like Western patriarchal regime kind of coming in and sweeping in. And so, how do we pull in youth who might feel lost or disconnected? Um, how do we move forward in the circle way together? If that's the way, that might not be the way.
Do you young people have anything out there to say, daughter, granddaughter, before I speak? Because grandmother goes big voice.
I don't know enough about the circle way to speak on that. I can talk a little bit about, because I do think it's an interesting question. Just something that was in the context of the question, but it has been in the context of a few of the questions, is this idea of the patriarchy being evil. And again, thinking about my own concept of evil as it being a choice, to choose to do something to harm others. I'm not saying that there's a system in place, but I think that we have to stop giving so much attention to the system. And I know I'm considered young, but people younger than me tend to be very angry at males and men because they are representatives of the patriarchy. And I don't think that's a fair way for us I don't think any archies or isms, this applies to like all things, sexism, racism. I don't think that those are fair or nuanced ways for us to look at the world and the world's problems. I think it's important that we look at everything. All of those things come down to individual choices. I'm especially clear about that. Working in an organization right now where there are choices being made, and sometimes those choices are radical in the ways that the organization wants those choices to be, and sometimes they are very conservative and not pushing progress forward in the way that they dream that they are doing. And all of that comes down to an individual at some point making a choice. A lot of times it comes down to someone very high up in an organization making a choice to be conservative or making a choice to be so-called progressive, or so-called conservative. Everyone, that is all very subjective. But I've known that for a long time. And for the first time in my life, it is very present to me that we can talk about systems all day long. We can talk about how laws get made. We can talk about representatives. We can talk about representation. Every single thing that happens, every single system that is in place that we say we're fighting against comes down to an individual choice every day. An individual who has power making a choice to enact a policy, an individual who has power making a vote, and individuals choosing to adhere to those authorities. And so at some point, sovereignty, I think, is the answer to many of those problems, starting with yourself. How are you upholding the patriarchy? How are you upholding a very backwards reactive matriarchal view? That's not the answer either. Where are you being reactionary? And how are you, one, creating balance in yourself, and two, encouraging balance in the world and the people around you? And how are you, when you have a position of power, to make a decision that's going to impact one other person, hundreds of other people, thousands, millions of other people? What choices do you make? Do you make choices in alignment with your principles, or do you make choices in alignment with your fear of risk of loss? And what are you willing to lose for the life, for the world that you say you want to create? You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose funders. You're going to lose so-called allies because either their principles don't actually align with their actions, or because social nicety will put you on the wrong side of right until everyone else catches up to where you are. And so deciding for yourself what you believe and where you want to stand, I think, is very important. And, at the end of the day, we need a balance between masculine and feminine energy. To go back to the original seed of why I'm talking about this, we need masculine energy, therefore we need men. We have to invite them into conversations, one, that honor them and what they bring and honor what masculine energy brings. And I think the real pendulum swing is an equal honoring of what feminine energy brings, and honoring that those things are very different and equally valuable. And that is really the definition of diversity and how we create diverse societies. It is not that everyone has to be treated the same. It is that everyone is allowed to be different, and that difference is important and valuable to our society. That's it. If only it were so easy.
Well said, Nisi. Well said. I look forward to hearing EA speak on the circle process, but I just wanted to share, I've had the immense fortune of running, I thought and still think of as a pretty awesome nonprofit organization that really strives to create community in the circle format. And I learned community organizing some 30 years ago through Alternate Roots, and we always met in a circle. And, it was an organization that was formed by artists, activists, community organizers who were very talented and didn't want anything to do with Broadway, but believed in the power of the art to create radical and positive social change. And so I just want to name Mama Nayo, Barbara Watkins, and Hollis Watkins and John O'Neill, who started the Free Southern Theater, you know, for teaching me the story circle process and teaching me that every time we come together in a circle and we create space for all the voices. So not sure if that's what circle process is, but I believe in that way that those individuals imparted that wisdom and practice to me. And I think that at this time, you know, there's a call on each of our lives, as far as I'm concerned, to be true to our own why. You know, we each have a purpose, we each something that only we can do. And I want to share, I really appreciate my niece. Actually, I wrote an idea some 10 years ago, and then I wrote a grant for it and just got funded. But I just want to read something that I wrote about the project, a couple sentences. It says, the project is called WePod because I was so sick of iPod from, you know, just from an individualistic perspective some 10 years ago. And many individuals today are searching in the elusive land of social media spaces for their why or their purpose in life. Many search externally for what ultimately resides within a creative genius that awaits full expression. WePod focuses away from so much emphasis on the individual. It's all about me, and seeks to center the individual within the context of community through engagement in the creative and healing arts. The times are entirely too expansive for a small and total individualistic focus to the exclusion of others in the broader world or community. We must come together. We need a WePod. So that's part of why I created this project, is to create circles, intergenerational circles with elders, with adults, with children, so that we can learn storytelling traditions and, you know, create the world that we want to have.
I was thinking that that sort of brings us back to where we are, because this inspired circle that we created here comes from Woman King. And so if you go back in there, you found that it was always that true to circle, that true to the whatever that principle, whatever the agreement was, it was a truth there. Whether it wasn't allowed to violate it because we showed up and agreed on this. The other part that caused me is like, when the other thing I love about going back to the looking at indigenous way of African communities, those that, and you talked about Botswana, and there are a couple of things that come to mind because it grieves me. At the same time, there's a kind of another story on the side of it, and so I'm gonna see if I can keep them balanced here. One of the things in the circle of the elders, there's an equal balance of male-female energy. There's a water spirit male, there's a water spirit female. In all of those directions, when we recognize the direction, the directions are operating in those turns, in those balanced ways. And so what they do, they organize their communal around those fact that there's an equality here. Somebody's bringing water energy, somebody's bringing wind energy, somebody's bringing earth energy, somebody's bringing the story from the mineral world, because the mineral world is that solid, that holder of the story. So the storyteller is always, it's like everybody is holding a piece in the circle. When we look at this larger circle, even though we are in these platforms, we can call them circles, acknowledge, because we talk about energetically. So now we said a circle is broadened. So each person in this circle brings a story from the ancestral piece. Either if they practice that in their indigenous way, they bring the story from that indigenous way, so it's welcome in the circle. Somebody sits in the north, somebody sits in the south, somebody sits in the east, and vice versa. Somebody sits in the center and hold the central current. When we come back to right order, if we look at creation in its creation story, and then many creation story, I like to go back to the tree of life in the Kabbalah, because it truly depicts the way creation moves. I think we forgot how creation moved itself. And we add all of these pieces, and we forgot what happened, that we all at one time understood how to hold these pieces. So you said, well, hi, if we all knew, there's something in me that says we had to break up apart and go out like on that heroic journey, in that initiatory journey, and come back with a new story. It's like all of us have gone out somewhere in our different racial, if we want to base it on race, because race is a delusion to me. So that's a whole nother story, because it got created. It's not even real. But that's, you can hold that. That's my truth. I think it's more than my truth. But it's just like when we began to step out of these fixed ways of seeing the world and begin to go back into that darkness, go back into that inner space and look at where we come through, as opposed to pointing fingers out, who did it? Was I not a part of that agreement? In some way, there's an agreement that's being made with a conscious agreement. We're making these agreements. And I like the way my granddaughter said, it's choices we're making. And sometimes we may not even know why we have made that choice until we get back to this circle and begin to discuss, wow, what did we learn? I like that. What have we learned from this story that we told this thousands and thousands of years ago? And what do we bring back in our baskets now to weave together this new hoop, this new circle of intergenerational? And I feel that it's interdimensional, intergenerational, and interhuman, because we all are of the human species. And I think we miss that. We all are human species. I can name myself Jewish, I can name myself what, but we all are human species with different shades, different hues. We went out in these fields. Now, what are we gonna come back and create this hoop from? Now I want to jump over to Botswana losing, this is what modernity does. And so we making choices. We're gonna chase that. As a story told to me, somebody come in, you having the pure gold, but somebody brings a shiny piece in and you say, oh, you go for the shiny, but you already sitting on what made you shiny. You realize you're sitting on what makes the shiny. So you go out here in this field and you chase the illusion when you're sitting on a true essence of what created the shiny. But I may not have known that, like the baby again, I'm going back to the baby. I don't know until I'm willing to crawl, walk, and expand and come back. I think we forget that beginning, walking life, that choice that we made. It's not a complete story. We all are weaving that story. So, but now, sin, how do we come in this circle? Today, this is a beautiful circle because his voice is being heard. The questions, I would love to hear every voice, but I know that would be kind of disrupted in this circle that we created. So we're doing the best that we can. But it's a beautiful circle. And it may be another way that we have to learn to use circles. I don't know, just a hypothetical projection. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel so grateful for every word. I'm holding on to every word. This was a beautiful circle. And I do hope that more emerges from this, that this is just the little seed. And I invite everyone now, like I would love to hear everyone's voices too, but at least in the chat to put some closing remarks or any final insights that you may have, and speakers as well, if there's any closing remarks you feel called to share, final themes, things like this. Let's do that now. I know for me, like this was such a pleasant surprise. I knew it was going to be good. I didn't know it was going to be this good to have 3 generations. It's amazing. And I have a special friend here, but I'm not going to call you out to put your camera on or on mic, but she is my wisdom keeper and elder from Botswana that I had learned from. And I would love for a way, Carolyn, for you to connect with her on the storytelling and the wee pod, like the bringing the youth in to kind of create their own stories, but also carry on these oral traditions is the big work that she's doing in Botswana through performance and arts. And it's amazing. So just trying to weave that little weaving together. But anyway, yeah, closing remarks from any of you.
I'm a teacher, so, and I have like a mental, a mental like notes in my head. So what we have is know your why, maintain your sovereignty, and by that sovereignty, be responsible for your individual choices to ensure that you are using your free will to contribute to love or to evil, your choice. Just know what you're doing and really know what you're doing, because it can be insidious and subtle, and you think you're doing right and you might be doing wrong. And that is human, right? And talk to your ancestors. They're waiting to hear from you. Those are my cliff notes.
Mary, there's a question in the chat. I can't read it. It's a question. It seems as it's important. It's a, I don't know who wrote it. It's what this question is. It seemed like an important question. It just came up. Oh God. It seemed like it was a.
Give us a keyword that you remember, Ia, and I'll find it.
I can't. I can't find it. Because I asked the person. I can't find it. Sorry.
Is it about the loneliness and the algorithm?
I don't know. I can't see it. Sometimes I can't read these things because I am going to see an eye doctor, and I just realized that I'm not able. And you guys, I just made 84 years around the sun, so give me a break here. So anyway, it was a question. It seemed like it was really important, and that's why I asked. I'm gonna let my daughter, and I think I'll take the. It's like the one thing that I learned from my elders is that the elder speaks, always have the open remark, and the elder is the closer. I don't know that that's a truth either, but anyway, I kind of practice it and I like it.
Yes, thank you, Mom. And you know, the song that keeps Mamoose is the name of the group, and you all probably are familiar with them. And they have this song, Tony, I can't remember the name of the song. My friend Tony is here, but we shall be known.
We shall be known.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
we
that the
shall
name
be
of the
known.
song? We shall be known
Uh-huh.
by the company we keep,
Uh-huh.
by the ones who gather around to tend the fires. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time that we lead ourselves back into the well. And I think the end of both of those, the documentary, you know, Lapita's epiphany of, you know, hearing all of the wonderful stories about the tribe, and then coming to this realization, the Dahomey warriors, and then coming to this realization about some of the ways that, as my niece so beautifully put it, you know, the choices that they were making that were not value creating, and then looking at the woman king and the disobedience that Viola's character, you know, that decision that she made, but what the result was, you know. And I guess what is my point of bringing those two things together is I feel that as humans, you know, we're not perfect, but this, you know, it is time to lead ourselves into the well. It's time to lead with love and really to do the best that we can. And I love, again, what my niece just framed up, you know, so beautifully, knowing our why, maintaining our sovereignty. And what was that third point, teacher?
I deleted it after I read it. I have a etch a sketch. Just
Okay. Well, making those choices, those conscious choices
I
about,
think
you
it
know,
has balance.
yeah,
Yeah.
that balance piece. And
Mhm.
then, you know, definitely talking to our ancestors. So I want to turn it over to my mom, and happy birthday. Love you, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of what you do.
And it comes to me, you know, many times we show up in the world and we believe that we have the answer. My elders tell me, unless we're willing to ask the question and be open for the answer, we always gonna fail ourselves. So from my teacher to my teachers and all my elders, to me, it's like, be willing to show up, ask the question, and allow yourself to be surprised sometimes, to be informed. It's like we want to tell a story, but ask the question, even from my own stories, what have I learned? We're so quick to judge ourselves and judge what's good or what's bad. People get angry with me about, and people will say to me, what about Donald Trump? Oh, I said, Donald Trump is good for the country. Don't y'all understand that? Why? Because he lifts the veil so we can see our darkness, see the darkness within the context of the country. He shows you your ugliness. Is that ugliness in me? What is he showing me? As opposed to me pointing my finger out and talking about how bad he is. I'm just using that because it's part of the drama right now that's evading the world, evading the conversation, evading everything, and everybody's caught up in it. What is the question? How am I being informed? Be willing to be open and ask the question, even about some things that's been taught to us. Ask the question, how does it inform me? Be willing to ask the question and listen for the answer. Listen. Don't be anxious. It may not come until maybe another year. It may not. Will I be okay with that? But it's, wow, I asked that question all the way back there. I got questions I asked when I was a little girl. I used to go, why do you bring me down to this well every day? This spring, I used to have a spring that I go to in the morning, and I can see myself going to that spring every morning. And it was like I would be invited to go there every morning. And I would look in that spring and I could see myself laying on my stomach, looking down in that spring. And when I look back, I said, but you was only 4 years of age. And I remember what I asked it. Can you see me? And what I realized in going back to visit that question, when did I learn that it did see me and it did answer me? But I didn't learn until later in life that it did answer me. In fact, it might have been just a few days ago that I learned that she did answer me. Because every day, a little innocent 4-year-old went to that, down to that spring, laid on her stomach, and looked down in it and saw this mirror face coming back at her. And it's like I would travel so deep into her till I hit the bottom and go to the darkness, and I would sit there and I'm like, and then I would see myself coming back up. So sometimes we have to be willing to sit with that question that we ask in these moments of contemplation. So I invite us all, ask more questions about, don't take our words for what was said here, but go ask your own question, go deeper into yourself and see if you have other questions, or maybe some answers or some surprises. Thank you. I love you all. You're so beautiful. You surprised me. Mary, one day I'm gonna walk into the place and we're gonna hug each other because you're such a beautiful, bright light in the world and so willing to be vulnerable and set yourself as this trailblazer for this new emerging humanity on this planet. Thank you so much.
All the thanks are to you. I love you. And I'm just, yeah, the gratitude is strong. So thank you so much. I feel so honored to be here, to be able to be here. And I wanted to ask Carolyn, no pressure, but for a closing prayer or offering, I don't know if you are open to singing the song you mentioned or doing a song.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I will definitely try to sing that song. What's the name of the song again, Tony? We Shall Be Known.
We shall be known. I'll help you maybe.
Okay, that's my friend Tony, who's a storyteller and a drummer and many other things from Pittsburgh. We shall be known by the company we keep,
By
by
the
the ones who
songs that circle round to tend these
these
fires.
skies. We shall
We
be
shall be known
known by the
by the
ones who
ones
sow and
who sow
reap the
the
seeds
seeds
of
of
change,
change of life
life from deep
deep
within the
within
earth.
the earth.
It
It
is
is
time
time
now.
now.
It is
It
time
is
now
time
that
now
we
that
thrive.
thrive.
It is
It is
time we
time
lead
we lead
ourselves
ourselves into the
into the well.
well.
It is
It is
time
time
now.
now.
And what a
And what
time to
time to
be
be
alive
alive.
in
In
this
this
great
great
turn.
turning we shall learn to
Lead
lead
in
in
love.
love.
In
In
this great
great
turning,
turning we
shall
shall
learn
learn to
in
lead
love.
in love.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a treat and what beautiful lyrics. I feel like that's a perfect closing piece. just thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you so much to our speakers for the wisdom offered, family wisdom. I feel it. It's just incredible. And we will keep all updated. We hope that there's more to come. So with that, so long, everybody. And just thank you a million times.
Mary, let's be in touch, please.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, looking forward to it.